Maya and Daniel met on the very first day of high school, both new to Silver Creek High. Maya's family had just moved from the city's bustling heart to its quiet outskirts, a move her parents hoped would bring peace and a better life. Daniel, on the other hand, had grown up just a few blocks away, and his familiarity with the town was evident in his casual strides and the way he greeted every passerby with a nod. But even though their lives had started on such different paths, fate had a way of bringing them together. Their first encounter was almost accidental. Maya, nervously clutching her backpack, had been looking for the school library when she walked straight into Daniel, who was lost in his own world, earbuds in, humming softly to the beat. They collided, sending her books scattering across the hallway. Daniel pulled out his earbuds, face flushing with apology as he quickly knelt down, gathering her books, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Maya was caught off guard by his warm, genuine smile, the kind that put people at ease. She couldn't help but smile back. From that day on, it was as if an invisible string connected them. They found themselves choosing seats beside each other in classes, sharing lunch at the same table, and walking to and from school in unplanned companionship. What started as coincidence soon turned into tradition. They spoke of everything. Maya shared her love of reading and how she dreamed of becoming an author one day. Daniel, in turn, talked about his fascination with art, the way he loved to sketch things as they were, but capture them in ways that only he could see. Maya adored listening to him describe his dreams, the passion in his voice infectious and sincere. One autumn afternoon, when the leaves began to turn a fiery red, Maya convinced Daniel to visit the old park near her house. The park was filled with towering oak trees, their branches reaching out like arms to embrace the world. They found a quiet bench and spent hours talking about the things that mattered to them. As twilight descended, Daniel pulled out his sketchbook and surprised Maya with a quick drawing of her, capturing her laugh and the sparkle in her eyes. She blushed, snatching the sketchbook from him with a playful glare. He laughed, telling her it was his way of capturing moments he never wanted to forget. Their friendship deepened over the years. Together, they experienced the usual teenage rites of passage, midnight study sessions before exams, the excitement of attending school dances, and the thrill of discovering new places in their town. They found hidden trails, explored abandoned buildings, and on quiet afternoons shared secrets that they would never tell anyone else. They were two halves of the same whole, moving in sync with each other. Yet, amidst the light-hearted moments, there were glimpses of the shadows that shaped their lives. Maya occasionally hinted at the pressure she felt from her parents to excel, to be perfect, to live up to expectations that weighed on her shoulders. Daniel, on the other hand, spoke of his family's struggles to make ends meet, his father's long hours, and the way he felt compelled to succeed, if only to make things a little easier. They supported each other, their bond becoming an anchor amid the storm. One winter evening, after weeks of whispering, Maya finally worked up the courage to tell Daniel her family was planning to move again. She shared the news in a quiet voice, unsure of how he would react. His face went pale, his usual spark dimmed. He reached for her hand, holding it tightly, as if he could keep her grounded, keep her there with him. They sat in silence, the weight of the news sinking in. The next few weeks were filled with bittersweet moments, with neither wanting to speak of the inevitable. They spent every moment they could together, capturing memories like photographs they would store in their hearts. They visited their favorite places one last time, lingering longer than usual, as if somehow that would make the memories last. On the day of her departure, they met in their usual spot under the large oak tree at the park. The air was thick with emotion, their words few, each one laced with the sorrow of impending separation. Daniel pulled out a small notebook, the one he'd been sketching in for years, and handed it to her. Maya flipped through it, her eyes misting as she saw herself through his eyes, the way he'd captured her laughter, her quiet moments, the times she hadn't even realized he was watching. It was his gift to her, a piece of his heart she could carry with her. They promised each other that this wasn't the end. "I'll find you again, no matter how far," Daniel said, his voice trembling. Maya nodded, a small tear slipping down her cheek. They held each other, neither wanting to let go, as if clinging could defy fate. When they finally parted, it felt like a piece of their souls had been torn away. As her car pulled away, Maya looked back, catching a glimpse of Daniel standing alone under the tree, his figure small but resolute. She pressed her hand against the window, watching as the distance grew, taking her further and further from the boy who had come to mean so much to her. The days that followed were lonely for both. Maya would reach for her phone, half expecting a message from him, only to remember he was miles away. She pored over his sketches, reliving those moments, but each image only deepened her longing. Daniel, meanwhile, spent his evenings at the park, sketching, hoping that somehow the act of drawing their memories would bridge the distance between them. But life moved forward, as it always does, and their connection gradually faded, like a sunset slipping into night. Their hearts, however, never truly forgot. Chapter 2. Life's Trials. After Maya left, Daniel's life changed in ways he had never anticipated. For a long time he clung to memories of her, the sparkle in her eyes, her laughter, and the gentle moments they had shared. But as days turned to months and then to years, the weight of reality pressed in. High school eventually ended, and instead of going to college, Daniel began working to help support his family. The economy in his town was unsteady, and work was hard to come by, but Daniel was committed to making things better. Then came the day that would alter his family's life forever. His father's business, a small repair shop that had served the community for years, failed. Daniel's father, once a man with a hopeful outlook and an infectious laugh, now carried a weariness he couldn't shake. As bills piled up and creditors began knocking, the family struggled to stay afloat. It wasn't long before they lost their home, forced to leave the only place they had ever known and move into a cramped apartment on the city's outskirts. Determined to help his family recover, Daniel made the decision to move to a larger city, hoping for better job prospects. With a heavy heart, he hugged his mother, promising he would do everything he could to support them. His father, though proud, seemed broken, a shadow of the man he once was. Daniel's departure was filled with hope, but tinged with sadness, as he knew he might never return the same. Upon arriving in the city, Daniel faced the harshness of urban life. Unlike his small town, where faces were familiar and kindness often a given, the city was a world unto itself, vast and indifferent. The towering buildings and endless stream of people made him feel small, like he was drowning in a sea of strangers. He walked the streets day after day, resume in hand, applying to any job he could find, restaurants, grocery stores, construction sites, anywhere that might offer him a way to earn money. But each rejection chipped away at his hope, leaving him weary and worn. He lived in a small, dilapidated apartment, barely able to afford rent. Nights were the hardest. Alone in a cramped space with cracked walls and leaky pipes, Daniel often lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how things had gone so wrong. He thought of Maya sometimes, wondering where she was, whether she had achieved the dreams she once spoke of, and if she ever thought of him. In those moments, her memory was a small comfort, a reminder of happier times and of the boy he had once been. One morning, as he wandered downtown, he spotted a sign in the window of a new shoe store, "Help Wanted." He stopped, staring at the sign, heart pounding. He had nothing to lose by trying, so he took a deep breath and stepped inside. The store was sleek and modern, with rows of polished shoes displayed like trophies. Daniel felt out of place in his worn-out clothes and scuffed sneakers, but he swallowed his insecurity and approached the counter, where a young manager was busy talking to another employee. The manager, a sharply dressed man named Alex, looked at Daniel with a hint of disdain, sizing him up. "Can I help you?" Alex asked, his tone laced with condescension. Daniel cleared his throat, trying to sound confident. "I'm here about the job. I'm a hard worker and I learn quickly." Alex raised an eyebrow, looking him up and down. "Do you even have experience in retail?" he asked, the question more mocking than curious. Daniel hesitated, feeling a flush rise in his cheeks. "Not exactly, but I've worked in a small shop before. I know how to deal with customers." Alex sighed, barely containing a smirk. "Well, you don't exactly look the part, do you?" he muttered under his breath, eyes drifting to Daniel's worn clothes. He told Daniel to come back the next day for an official interview, though the disdain in his tone made it clear he had little expectation. That night, Daniel lay awake, rehearsing what he would say, how he would present himself. He did his best to wash and press his clothes, scrubbing his shoes to make them look just a little better. He knew he didn't have much, but he was determined to make a good impression. When he arrived the next morning, Alex greeted him with the same condescending look, barely hiding his smirk. The manager looked Daniel up and down, and even before Daniel could speak, Alex began throwing questions at him with a sneer. "Is this really your best?" he asked, glancing at Daniel's clothes with an exaggerated frown. "Do you even understand what this job requires?" Daniel swallowed hard, his throat tight as he nodded. "I'm here to learn and to work hard. I may not have the experience you're looking for, but I can prove myself," he said, his voice unwavering. Alex chuckled, a mocking edge in his laugh. "Well, we don't typically hire amateurs, especially not ones who can't dress the part," he said, loud enough for others in the store to hear. A few employees glanced over, some pitying, others indifferent. The humiliation washed over Daniel, but he forced himself to stay calm, to focus on the reason he was there. The manager continued his barrage of questions, each one more pointed than the last, until finally he turned to his staff, gesturing towards Daniel with a smirk. "Now, here's a prime example of what not to wear to an interview," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The staff exchanged uncomfortable glances, but none dared to speak up. Daniel felt a tightness in his chest, his hands shaking slightly as he clenched them at his sides. He thought of his parents, of the sacrifices they had made, and of the promises he had given them. But the shame was overwhelming, a deep ache that made him want to turn and leave. He struggled to hold back tears, refusing to let Alex see his pain. One of the younger employees, a girl who couldn't have been much older than him, gave him a sympathetic look, her expression softening. But her gaze held helplessness, as if she wanted to help but didn't know how. Daniel managed a small, grateful nod, silently telling her he was okay, even though he felt anything but. Just as he was about to leave, a sudden hush fell over the store. The sound of heels clicking against the polished floor echoed as a woman entered. The employees turned, their eyes widening as they recognized her. It was the store owner, Maya, radiating confidence and elegance as she strode inside. Daniel's breath caught, his heart skipping as he realized who it was. There, standing in the middle of the store, was the girl he had loved, the one he had thought he'd lost forever. This sets up for the emotional reunion and confrontation that will happen in the next chapter, emphasizing Daniel's struggles and highlighting the injustices he faces, creating a powerful moment for Maya's entrance. Here's the third chapter, Fate's Reunion, where Maya and Daniel finally reunite, bringing both joy and tension. This section captures the emotions and realizations that come with their unexpected encounter, the impact of their shared past, and Maya's reaction to the treatment Daniel received. Chapter 3. Fate's reunion. Daniel stood frozen, disbelief and a torrent of emotions rushing through him as he watched Maya walk into the store. He had dreamed of seeing her again countless times, imagined what he might say, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of this moment. She looked both familiar and different, still with the same grace he remembered, but now more composed, with a self-assuredness that seemed to fill the room. Maya hadn't noticed him at first, her attention on her phone as she walked past rows of shoes, speaking with one of her assistants. But as she approached the counter where Daniel stood, her gaze lifted, and their eyes met. She stopped mid-sentence, her face registering first surprise, then shock, and finally a flicker of recognition. It felt as though time had stopped. For a moment, everything around them faded. The laughter, the murmuring staff, even Alex's sneering gaze. There was only Daniel and Maya, staring at each other, connected by the memories of a past they thought they had left behind. "Daniel," she whispered, almost as if she were afraid he might disappear if she said his name too loudly. "Maya," he replied, his voice barely audible. He felt the weight of years in that single word, the ache of all the time they had lost, the feelings he had buried but never forgotten. A mix of emotions flashed across her face, joy, relief, and something close to sorrow. She stepped closer, eyes scanning his face, as if reassuring herself that he was really there. I can't believe it's you," she said, a tear slipping down her cheek. She reached out, her hand trembling as it found his, holding it tightly. "I've thought about you so many times, wondering where you were. What happened to you?" Daniel swallowed hard, struggling to contain the emotions welling up within him. "I thought I'd never see you again. Life took us in different directions, but I never forgot you, Maya." Their reunion, however, was quickly interrupted by Alex, who looked between them with a confused expression, clearly irritated by the scene unfolding. "Excuse me," he said, addressing Maya with the same arrogance he had shown Daniel. "Miss Carter, we were just conducting an interview here," he added, gesturing towards Daniel with a look of disdain. "This applicant is obviously not suited for the job." Maya's warm expression froze as she registered the tone in Alex's voice. She looked from him to Daniel, her gaze narrowing as understanding dawned. "Is that so?" she replied, her voice calm but laced with a steely edge. "And what exactly makes him unsuited?" Alex hesitated, clearly thrown by her shift in demeanor. "Well, I mean, just look at him," he stammered, trying to cover his discomfort with a dismissive wave. "I mean, no offense, but we have a certain image here, and he doesn't exactly fit." Maya's eyes flashed with anger. "An image? That's all you care about?" She glanced at Daniel, the hurt in his eyes unmistakable. Her hands clenched into fists as she turned back to Alex, her voice cold and unyielding. "Daniel happens to be more than qualified. In fact, he's more than you'll ever be," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "And if that's how you treat people here, then you're the one who doesn't fit." The store was silent, employees exchanging stunned glances. Alex shifted uncomfortably, caught off guard by her fury. "Miss Carter, I didn't mean to—" "Apologize," Maya interrupted, her voice unwavering. "Right now." Alex's face turned red, clearly humiliated, but he dared not disobey. He turned to Daniel, swallowing hard. I apologize," he mumbled, though the words were devoid of sincerity. "Louder," Maya demanded, crossing her arms as she glared at him. "I want everyone here to hear it." Alex's face flushed even deeper. I'm sorry," he said louder, though his tone remained cold. But Maya didn't seem satisfied. "You're done here, Alex," she said, her voice cold and final. "Pack up your things and leave." Alex stared at her in disbelief, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to find words. "Miss Carter, please, you don't need to do this. I was just—" "Now!" she replied firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. Alex, realizing his pleas were futile, stormed off, his face twisted with resentment as he muttered under his breath. As he disappeared from sight, Maya turned back to Daniel, her face softening. She reached for his hand again, her fingers intertwining with his as she looked at him with a mixture of tenderness and sorrow. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. I had no idea." Daniel managed a weak smile, still overwhelmed by everything that had happened. It's okay, Maya. I've been through worse," he said, though the words felt hollow. Seeing her again had brought back memories of a happier time, but it also reminded him of all the years of hardship he had endured. Maya's eyes filled with tears as she realized the depth of his struggle. She took a shaky breath, and before he could say another word, she dropped to her knees in front of him, looking up with a vulnerable expression that took him by surprise. "Daniel," she began, her voice choked with emotion, "all these years, I've been searching for you in my heart, hoping that one day I'd find you again. I know this isn't how we imagined things would be, but I can't bear to lose you again." Her voice trembled as she reached for his hand, her gaze unwavering. Will you marry me?" Daniel stared at her, stunned, his mind reeling as he tried to process her words. Part of him felt unworthy, too damaged by the years of hardship he had endured. But as he looked into her eyes, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a glimmer of hope. "Maya," he whispered, his voice filled with emotion. "Are you sure? After all this time, after everything that's happened, are you really sure?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Unable to hold back any longer, Daniel pulled her into his arms, hugging her tightly as tears spilled from his own eyes. They clung to each other, two souls that had been separated by fate but had finally found their way back. The staff around them, once spectators to the tension, now watched with a sense of awe, moved by the scene unfolding before them. Some wiped away tears, while others smiled, touched by the strength of their love. After a moment, Maya pulled back, wiping her tears with a trembling hand as she looked at Daniel with a soft smile. "You don't have to worry anymore," she said, her voice filled with determination. "You're with me now, and we'll build a future together, a future where we can both live with dignity and love." Daniel smiled, his heart swelling with a mixture of relief and joy. "Thank you, Maya, for everything," he whispered, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. Maya took his hand, guiding him toward the front of the store. She turned to the remaining employees, her voice steady and warm. "Everyone, this is Daniel," she said, her tone filled with pride, "and he'll be joining us as the new manager here." There was a ripple of applause from the staff, who seemed genuinely happy for the couple. Daniel felt a rush of gratitude as he looked around, the reality of his new life beginning to sink in. He had faced hardship and heartbreak, but at last he had found the one thing that truly mattered, the love he had thought he had lost forever. As they walked out of the store hand in hand, Maya looked up at him with a smile that made his heart skip a beat. "Welcome home, Daniel," she whispered, squeezing his hand. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt that he was, indeed, home. Chapter 4. A New Beginning. With Maya's proposal accepted and their love rekindled, Daniel's life took a drastic turn. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions as he settled into his new role and began adjusting to the reality of being by Maya's side. Gone were the days of scouring the city for work, enduring belittling looks and curt rejections. For the first time in years, Daniel felt a sense of security, a feeling he'd almost forgotten. Maya was by his side through every step, helping him adjust to his new role as manager of the store. At first, Daniel felt out of place in his position, uncomfortable with the weight of authority after years of hardship and humility. But Maya's gentle guidance and unwavering confidence in him eased his nerves. She taught him the ins and outs of running the store, guiding him through challenges with patience and trust. Every morning, they arrived at the store together, often sharing breakfast on the way. The employees, many of whom had witnessed the unexpected reunion, treated him with newfound respect and admiration. No longer the shy applicant in threadbare clothes, Daniel grew into his role, learning to manage the staff and handle responsibilities he never imagined himself capable of. The store flourished under his watch, his sincerity and humility creating an atmosphere of respect and camaraderie among the employees. Yet despite the happiness and security he now enjoyed, Daniel couldn't shake a lingering feeling of disbelief. Every night, as he lay beside Maya, he would stare at the ceiling, sometimes wondering if it was all just a dream. Maya sensed this, and on those nights, she would hold his hand, whispering reassurances that would calm his heart. "This is real, Daniel. We're here, together, and nothing will take that away from us," she would say, her voice steady and full of love. In those moments, Daniel felt a deep gratitude for her presence and the second chance they had been given. As they settled into their routine, they shared stories about the years they had spent apart. Maya told him about her family's move to the city, her education, and the challenges of building her business from the ground up. She had faced her own struggles, working tirelessly to achieve her goals and secure a future that she could be proud of. Daniel listened intently, amazed by her resilience and determination. Her journey inspired him, and he began to see their reunion not just as a twist of fate, but as a testament to the strength and love they shared. Together, they created a life that blended their pasts and their dreams for the future. They began to refurbish the store, turning it into a warm and welcoming space with small touches that reflected their personalities. Maya introduced elegant decor, while Daniel added a rustic charm, incorporating pieces from his family's repair shop as a reminder of where he had come from. The store became not just a place of business, but a shared project, a symbol of their journey and the life they were building together. The transformation of the store attracted new customers, and business steadily improved. Daniel took pride in his work, finding purpose in every small task. He loved helping customers, offering sincere recommendations and a friendly ear. Many of the regulars came to appreciate his humble charm and approachable demeanor, often stopping by just to chat and share a laugh. He felt valued and respected in a way he hadn't experienced in years, and it strengthened his resolve to make the store a success. Outside of work, Daniel and Maya explored the city together, rediscovering places from their childhood and creating new memories. On weekends, they took walks in the nearby park, reliving the simple joys they had shared years ago. Sometimes, they would find a quiet bench, sitting side by side as they watched the world go by, content in each other's presence. Those moments, filled with peace and laughter, reminded them of the bond that had brought them together, a love that had withstood the test of time. But their journey wasn't without challenges. Daniel's family continued to struggle financially, and though he was able to send some money home each month, the weight of his family's hardships remained on his shoulders. Maya noticed his worry, and one evening, as they sat together in their small apartment, she broached the subject gently. "You know, I've been thinking," she said, her voice soft. "We could do more to help your family. Maybe bring them here, give them a fresh start." Daniel looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. "You would do that? For them?" Maya smiled, nodding. "Of course. They're part of you, Daniel. Helping them is something I would do without a second thought." Her words touched him deeply, and together they made a plan to bring his parents and siblings to the city. It was a daunting task, but Maya was steadfast in her support, standing by his side as they navigated the logistics. Weeks later, his family arrived, overjoyed and overwhelmed by the warmth of the home Daniel and Maya had prepared for them. Reunited, they shared meals and laughter, strengthening the bonds that hardship had once threatened to break. Watching his parents settle into their new life, Daniel felt a weight lift from his heart. He was finally able to give back to them, repay them for the sacrifices they had made. He watched as his father found work in a nearby workshop, his face lighting up with pride, and his mother found joy in simple things, her laughter filling their home once again. In the months that followed, life blossomed for Daniel and Maya in ways they hadn't anticipated. Their relationship grew stronger, rooted in the trials they had faced together. They supported each other through the challenges, celebrated each success, and embraced the small joys that filled their days. As the store continued to thrive, they began to dream of expanding their business, considering new locations and innovative ideas. It was a dream they shared, a vision that represented not just success, but the life they had built together, a life filled with love, dignity, and purpose. Daniel often marveled at the journey that had brought him here, the twists and turns that had led him back to Maya. The boy who had once struggled to make ends meet, who had endured the sting of rejection and the pain of separation, was now a man with purpose, surrounded by love and family. His heart was full, his spirit renewed, and as he looked into Maya's eyes each day, he knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Their love, forged through hardship and strengthened by faith, had become a beacon of hope, not just for them, but for those around them. They had defied the odds, defied prejudice, and emerged stronger side by side, bound by a love that had overcome every obstacle. And as they looked toward the future, they knew that whatever came their way, they would face it together, as they always had. Daniel and Maya's story was no longer one of lost love, but of love found anew, a love that had endured the darkest nights and emerged in the light of a new beginning. And together they would continue to write their story, one chapter at a time, knowing that the best was yet to come.